Hi everybody, this is RC. I wanted to talk a little bit about actions and how to be able to use scripting to do stuff inside of Photoshop. Now, in an action, what you wind up doing is you wind up recording a series of steps and repeating those steps against specific images. The problem that we wind up running into when we wind up working with actions is that it doesn't have any kind of comparison function in it. For example, let's just say that I want to be able to work with this folder here. And inside of this folder, I wind up having a whole bunch of different images. Some images are really small in dimension size, some images are not, and they'll be a little larger. But what I want to be able to do is I want to be able to say, you know what? Rather than opening up the several hundred folders that sit inside of here and all of the files, take a look at them and find out which one of these has pictures. We'll put something out there now. What I want to do is I want to be able to say, these pictures, anything that's in here that's greater than 500 pixels, I want to reduce down to 500 pixels. Anything that's under 500 pixels, I want to be able to leave alone. So I want to make a decision based on that image, and I think that it's going to be really hard for me to go into all of these folders and try to find each of the files, take a look at the files, and I want to keep all of the images inside of their respective folders. I don't want to have to move them and move them back. So this is where something like scripting can help us quite a bit, and I'll show you how. The Scripting Listener plugin sits in the Applications, and let's see, Photoshop CS3, and Scripting Guide, and Utilities. This is the plugin that we're working with. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy that plugin and I'm going to put it into the plugins directory for Photoshop. This is pretty much the same, both PC and Mac, so don't worry about that. Now take a look. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to quit Photoshop first. And then once I wind up quitting it, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to wind up restarting it. And I'll show you what it does now. I'm going to open up this document called Untitled1. The reason that I wound up using this was because there's really nothing to it. I don't want to necessarily focus on what it looks like. I want to focus what I'm doing here. I went into the image size and I'm changing this to 500 and I'm clicking OK. Then I'm going to do a save as. I'll go ahead and I'll replace that. I'm going to do a quality of 5. I'm going to click OK. And then I'm going to close that. Now, doesn't look like we wound up doing anything. I wasn't even hitting record here in the actions. But take a look at this. Inside of the desktop, you wind up finding something called scriptinglistener.js.log. I can go ahead and I can open this. I'm going to use something like, let's see, TextEdit. You can use WordPad or Notepad on a PC. But take a look at what it did here. It wound up actually taking all of the actions that I wound up doing in the document and saved them. So it looks like it wound up opening up a file, then it closed it, and then it looks like it ran something. So it's, let's see, the one that I'm looking for is here. So notice this is where this untitled. Now, I'm not really focusing too much on knowing code. All I'm looking for is something that's familiar to me. For example, I know that we did something called open, and I know that I opened up that file called untitled. Now, the two commands that I'm interested in are these here. The one where I wound up resizing something to 500 and the one that wound up saving it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use those as a foundation for a code, and I have the code set up, but I want to be able to show it to you. So I'm going to go over here. I have a folder called script, and inside of here I took two pieces of code using the script listener, and I'm just going to go ahead and open those so that I can show it to you. And all I did was I created a variable called tdoc. And tdoc is just the active document. And I said, all right, if that active document's width is greater than 500 pixels, I want you to run these two commands. If it's not, I want you to run this command, which is just basically a save. So I wanted it quick, dirty, I wanted to get in, I wanted to get out. So that's the script that I wound up generating. And the only thing that I really needed to know was how to be able to set up a variable and a comparison. And we can talk a little bit about that in another tutorial. But now what I'm going to do is, actually before I wind up doing anything else, what I'll do is I'm going to go into the applications and I'm going to go back into Photoshop CS3 and I'm going to go back to the plugins because I'm done with this, and it's a good idea that as soon as you're done with it, take it out and trash it, which is why I wound up making a copy. Notice in the utilities it's still there. Whenever I'm done with it, I go back in here, throw it in the trash, and restart Photoshop. And what that does is it stops the listener from actually going back in and doing that stuff over and over again and writing out a really, really long log. So now that Photoshop is up, what I'm going to do is I'm going to create an action. And the action is going to be script resizer. And what that action is going to do is it's going to wind up opening a file. I'll go to the desktop and I'll open one of the files in the sample folder. Once I have that open, what I want to do is I want to be able to run that script that I made. So I'm going to go to File, I'm going to go to Scripts, and then I'm going to go to Browse. And that's the script that I created. And I'm going to click on Load. What that'll do is that'll start running the script and it'll say, all right, make a comparison. Is this bigger than 500? No. So it just does a regular save. From there, I'll just go ahead and I'll do a close. And then I'll stop this action. So if it runs into a file that's going to be greater than 500, it'll resize it. If it runs into a file that's less than 500, it'll just go ahead and close it, or just do a regular save and close. Now that I'm set up, I can get and click on File, Automate, Batch. And then what I'll do is I'll choose the sample folder from the desktop and set my option for save and close. Once I click OK, it opens up each of the files and runs those scripts against it. So it's a quick way to be able to kind of get in and out and around having to use just regular actions and having to put a lot of manual labor by just using basic scripts. So I encourage you guys to take a look at these scripts and see how they can wind up helping you in your automation scenarios.